Ever since science fiction first emerged as a genre, writers have been creating worlds and populating them with places, beings, and technologies of their own mental creation, and things that seem like bizarre and outlandish works of the imagination one day sometimes end up becoming just a part of everyday life not too far down the line. You've almost certainly heard the phrase life imitating art at one time or another, and this phenomenon occurs much more frequently than you might think. From 1902's Le Voyage dans la Lune predicting space travel decades before it occurred, to Ray Bradbury's 1966 novel Fahrenheit 451 predicting earbuds, and 1984's The Terminator predicting military drones, much discussion is made on how human works of sci-fi seem to get a lot of things correct in their dark prophecies. It should of course be noted that they also get many things wrong. 2022 has passed us by, and we haven't started eating Soylent Green yet, or at least, not that we know of. Nonetheless, the regularity with which the genre shows us things that don't exist yet, but will fairly soon, is quite remarkable. But there's one story, a short story from 1909, that doesn't seem to get much of a mention when these sorts of discussions come up, and it's one that I feel deserves far more recognition than it currently gets. This story did predict forms of technology that are now in regular use across the world, and we will touch on those shortly. But my main reason for writing and making this video isn't so much to talk about the technology itself, but about the profound effect it has had on the people who used it. This story is called The Machine Stops, and it was written by the English author E.M. Forster back in 1909. The Machine Stops is a story that points an eerily accurate and, quite frankly, horrifying picture of our present lifestyles and our future lifestyles too. This story is, and I cannot stress this enough, an extremely important one, and one that I would encourage each and every one of my subscribers to read. A PDF will be linked in the description below. Now, I'll just take this opportunity to ask that you kindly hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon to be notified of future uploads. Thank you. The story begins with Vashti. She's a woman living in a globalized future Earth. It isn't specified just how much time has passed between when the story was written and when it takes place, but based on just how different life is for Vashti than it is for us, it would seem to be quite a far-off future indeed, or perhaps not that far off at all. She, along with everyone else on Earth, lives inside of a hexagonal room underground, a sort of pod, if you will, which she has no need to ever leave, and all of her basic needs are taken care of by the machine, which controls every single aspect of every person's life automatically. There are buttons and switches for everything in her room. Food dispensation, playing music, fast delivery of new clothing, instant hot water, almost anything you can imagine, as these buttons and switches line all of the walls, floor to ceiling. Everybody in this future lives alone, in their hexagonal rooms. Any socializing they do is conducted remotely, through something described as a small round plate, which, despite its shape, is quite reminiscent of our smartphones, in that it can be used for making video calls. Vashti, at the beginning of the story, receives a video call from her son, Kuno. He asks Vashti for something quite unusual and, to the average person of this time, baffling. He asks to see her in person. Her reply is quite telling. "But I can see you," she exclaimed. "What more do you want? This is a world populated with people who would much rather just stay indoors, where it's safe and everything is done for them, than actually go out and see a family member in person. Comfort and convenience are all that matter to most people in Vashti's globalized society. Real human contact, face-to-face contact, is just not the done thing. Any real-world activity is looked upon as primitive and pointless." As Vashti tells her son Kuno when he declares that he wishes to go to the surface of the earth to explore and see what lies above, it is contrary to the spirit of the age. Indeed, the so-called spirit of the age seems to be one of lazing around consuming media in the form of lectures and machine-generated literature, and pontificating on ideas. Ideas seem to be at the forefront of the minds of Vashti and the friends she communicates with through the machine. Mulling over ideas, coming up with ideas, and discussing other people's ideas seem to be quite a popular pastime, but it soon becomes apparent to the reader that in Vashti's world nobody has any ideas at all, certainly no new ones, and their endless discussions about intriguing ideas are simply endless, dull and shallow second, third and fourth hand ideas going back and forth, resembling the online echo chambers that we have today. Due to their wholly artificial lifestyles, where everything they eat and drink, and even the air they breathe, barely resembles anything real, the physicality of these future people has degenerated to an alarming degree. Vashti is described as being a swaddled lump of flesh when she is first introduced to the reader. Good nutrition was deemed pointless by the all-controlling machine, and when it came to the production of food, quote, something good enough had long since been accepted by our race. While the character of Vashti indicates someone willing to blindly accept and submit to a gross and unnatural reality pushed on everyone by the technocratic whims of the machine, her son Kuno represents something different. Kuno is a man who is growing more and more ill at ease with the current state of things. He longs for adventure and wishes to explore the world above, despite the apparent dangers of doing so. He also, rightfully, questions aspects of the world he lives in. In response to Vashti's previously mentioned statement, it is contrary to the spirit of the age, Kuno retorts with a question. Do you mean by that contrary to the machine? Which causes her to stammer and stumble. Kuno was, like everyone on the planet at this time, born in a public nursery. Babies in this world are born by natural means, but as soon as they are born, they are then taken away and removed to the public nurseries. Parents' duties of, said the Book of the Machine, cease at the moment of birth. Vashti decides, despite her fears, that she will journey from the southern hemisphere where her home is, to the northern hemisphere where her son was designated a home once he had come of age, to visit him as he had requested. He apparently has something urgent to tell her. Something he would rather say in person than through the machine, despite the conventions of the time. To do this, Vashti must board an airship that will take her on a 2-day journey across the planet. She takes only one possession along for the journey, one that brings her great comfort and solace, her Book of the Machine. The machine is man-made, as Kuno pointed out to Vashti before, but like many man-made concepts today, it has been deified and is beyond reproach. O machine, Vashti murmurs to herself in prostration before opening up the holy instruction manual. While on the airship that will take Vashti to Kuno, a nearby traveller drops his Book of the Machine, and he doesn't know what to do about it. His feeble attempt at reaching down to pick it up proves fruitless. He's too weak to do so, and not due to any serious malady or old age. He is simply too weak and too dependent on the workings of his room, which would normally pick up the dropped book and pass it to him. He is simply a typical man of this future age, too frail and passive to undertake even the simplest of physical tasks. His need to do anything himself, anything at all, has been taken from him by the machine, in much the same way that we in modern times have outsourced many of the everyday tasks our ancestors performed to technological apparatuses and organizations. And while most people in the modern world have become completely detached and disconnected from nature, no longer growing our own food or tending our own livestock, being totally reliant on central heating in the winter and air conditioning in the summer, the people of Vashti and Kuno's future Earth have gone one step further. Rather than being simply detached from nature and only seeing it as a resource to exploit, the people of the machine stops now genuinely hate nature. The very sight of the trees, the snowy mountains, and the twinkling stars above are so distasteful to Vashti and her contemporaries that they insist on the windows of the airships they travel on being completely covered up for the journey. Cover the window, please. These mountains give me no ideas. When the cover of the window breaks and the cabin is flooded with natural light, Vashti and her fellow passengers are outraged and disgusted. They much prefer the artificial light and air provided by the machine in their hexagonal underground rooms. When Vashti eventually reaches the northern hemisphere, where Kuno lives, she discovers his reason for inviting her. Kuno, for the heinous crime of daring to explore the Earth's surface without jumping through the machine's petty bureaucratic hoops, is being punished with homelessness. In the eyes of the people whom the machine rules over, living without the decadent comforts of the machine is essentially a death sentence, and all of the propaganda being spread about the Earth's atmosphere being toxic only succeeds in reinforcing this idea. After Vashti's visit to see Kuno, some time passes. The almighty, all-powerful machine, the very same one which has been deified by people like Vashti who dismiss religion as primitive and then simply worship something else instead, like many in our present world, begins to fail. The infrastructure begins to degrade and ceases to work in the way that it should. The quality of the food provided drops significantly. The endless bureaucracy and the unsympathetic, soulless drones working for the Central Committee casually dismiss all complaints about the now much lower quality of life. The holy machine is stopping, something Kuno foresaw long ago. Their civilization is collapsing. At the end, the machine comes to a grinding halt. The inhabitants of the machine's society are plunged into darkness and violence breaks out. Vashti watches all of this in great horror from her room's door until most of them perish. Kuno has made his way to her, but has acquired serious injuries through the ensuing chaos. He is dying. But before he dies, he tells Vashti of the surface people who he has spent the past several years living amongst. They are a much purer people who live by their wits and hard work in natural communities, breathing the air that the underground people were always told is toxic. Before the gigantic airship crashes through the vomitory and into a ruined wharf, exploding in a titanic fireball and killing them, Kuno tells Vashti that the people on the surface have been waiting for the death of the machine, and now that this has come to fruition, they will no longer just be the homeless. They are humanity's true heirs. A fascinating story indeed, one that certainly captured my imagination. As I said near the beginning of this video, the fact that so much of what was written here in 1909 has come true, or is coming true, is startling. From the automation of many things now and possibly everything in the not too distant future, to our disconnect from nature, to the artificial everything consumed by the people in this story and their utter helplessness, I simply couldn't help but see the glaring parallels. But all of this is simply what I saw in the story, and I would certainly be interested in hearing what you think, so please leave a comment below with your thoughts. Also, I do in fact have an audio reading of E.M. Forster's The Machine Stops, performed by myself here on the channel, so if you were intrigued by my overview of this story and wish to hear it in its entirety, you can do so by heading over to the Beware the Q channel page here on YouTube. And finally, I would like to say thank you for watching. I very much appreciate you doing so. If you'd be so kind as to hit the like button, share this video around and subscribe to the channel, that too would be deeply appreciated. This has been Beware the Q, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care.